Welcome to Defcon 3. I'm KT McFarland. North Korea recently conducted its 5th nuclear test, and there seems to be nothing we can do to stop them. The Council on Foreign Relations, a distinguished international relations group, they've issued a report on U.S. policy towards North Korea. And here to discuss the findings of that report is former Assistant Secretary of Defense, Beth. Secretary Long, we are now in this conundrum. We've tried carrots, we've tried sticks, and nothing seems to top North Korea. They're building nuclear weapons, and they're building missiles capable of carrying those nuclear weapons and reaching the United States in near time. So what's next?
Well, I think what the report tries to do is really clarify this concept of carrots and sticks. Actually, over the decades, the U.S. has never really militarily reacted to any of the provocations that have become a cycle with North Korea. So this report talks a little bit more about sticks and, in fact, advocates the earlier use of sticks in order to halt the program.
Well, when you talk about sticks, what does that mean? Does it mean encouraging North Korea's neighbors in that part of the world to rearm? Does it mean military action on their part or our part? Or when you talk about sticks, do you worry about the escalation if there's a military response?
We do, but there's actually very nuanced sticks that include military action. One of them is a collective security agreement, for example. One of the things we talk about is enhancing sanctions and even broadening them. The other thing is a more secure and a more rigorous deterrence that includes military options and even the possibility of retaliation that is proportional to aggressive activities on the part of the North Koreans that are part of this cycle of getting into talks, creating crises, and getting acquiescence. But there's other things that are included that aren't military. For example, if there are not demonstrable and material improvements in North Korea's human rights violations, that the rest of the region take a look at, or in fact the UN take a look at delaying or suspending North Korea's UN membership.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, some people have said, look, we don't seem to have any leverage over North Korea, but China does. And so why does China not want to stop North Korea's program? Do they secretly want it to happen? And then I guess a follow-on question would be, what leverage would we have to use over the Chinese to convince them it's in best interest of China to stop the North Korean program?
Well, 2 points. We actually have leverage that we haven't been using, and the report speaks to that. But the main portion of the report actually does speak to the fact that China is North Korea's primary benefactor. And in fact, we haven't been particularly successful in getting the Chinese to take aggressive action to get North Korea to change its thinking and its behavior, although the Chinese and the Russians have supported the UN resolutions. So we talk a lot about the shared interests of China for regional stability, for example, and addressing some of Chinese concerns. The fact that further aggressing and destabilization may result in an immigration or a human rights problem that will really come up against and possibly cross Chinese borders, that we could collectively, by taking a regional approach and working together on North Korea, avoid and actually even conceivably take a look at a peace agreement that might, and sometime in the future, mean that we could look at both or all of the regional parties' defense structure at that point in time.
You know, you said a minute ago that we have leverage, we the United States have leverage over North Korea that we're not using. What would that be?
Well, so far we haven't done any kind of military actions that we have had on the table, at least in theory, as part of our strategic patience with North Korea. But even our implementation and those of regional players on the United Nations Resolution 2770, sanctions busting and sanctions deterrence and implementation haven't been exactly rigorous on our part or on part of regional players. And there's a place where China or South Korea and Japan and we all could work much more forcefully together.
Do you think, Secretary Long, that the next president is going to have to deal with a nuclear North Korea capable of launching an attack against the United States, even if it's just one intercontinental ballistic missile carrying a nuke?
Absolutely, and that's the reason for the report. The members were, I believe, unanimous in thinking that whoever this next president is, he or she is going to face, in the term of his or her presidency, a North Korea that is able to deliver a nuclear warhead on an interballistic missile or an ICBM to the western continental United States. We're already in danger to the extent that we have citizens or soldiers or businesses in the region. We have let the time run, but the clock is out of time, and it's basically a critical necessity that this president make a firm stand on where we are going to draw the line on North Korea's nuclear capability.
Well, that's pretty tough words, so thank you very much, Assistant Secretary Mary Beth Long. Thanks
My
for
pleasure.
joining us here on Defcon 3.
It's an honor, Katie.
I'm KT McFarland. Thanks for watching. And if you thought that the world was scary enough, it's even getting scarier. So watch FoxNews.com for more on the North Korean nuclear story, terrorism, and other international issues. Thanks for joining.